project that we run at the Presentation House Theatre. It's called the Firefly Project, and that is basically a storytelling, and we ask the participant to make their own stories and using their imaginations, and we bring those stories into a classroom or gathering, and we share the stories, and then we act out those stories with everybody involved. This opportunity came, and I thought we can do Mosaic Firefly Project, which is involving intergenerational participants, high school students and the seniors together. And we asked them to bring their migration stories. Younger ones, their parents came, so it's their parents' migration story. And some of them have moved here. All those stories are their stories that live in their home and in their heart. And so we gathered together and we listened to everybody's stories, and without judgment, without any filters, we acted out stories, becoming characters. That's the core of what we do for this program. And it is wonderful to have everybody from all sorts of backgrounds, different ages come together and trust one another to share their stories. And then having the audience today, my heart was full that the project came together in this way.
So this project came about when Manami at Presentation House Theatre and I saw a call out from the city of Richmond about an outreach project. So we got together and thought, wouldn't it be great if we did this in Richmond with the youth and seniors instead? And we described it as a storytelling and improvisation acting experience so that people can tell their own stories or their family stories. And luckily, we've had pretty good response from both the youth and seniors, and the groups were between like 15 and 20 people per group over the last year, so response was quite amazing actually. Every time coming into a community program, community outreach activity like this, as a playwright, as a director, it's not about telling the perfect story with the perfect light and sound and everything. It's really just about making sure the participants are heard, making sure that they are involved in the project, and that's the most important thing for me. And so that's one thing that I'll always remember, because this is why we became artists. This is why, because we want to tell stories, tell our stories and tell other people's stories.
Welcome and good afternoon. Thank you very much for being here today and joining us for Mosaic Firefly Migration Stories, Richmond Edition, a guided play theatrical performance focused on the personal migration stories of youth and seniors in Richmond. I'm Nikhat Qureshi, project coordinator for this project with Richmond Multicultural Community Services and your MC for this afternoon. Before we begin, I would like to introduce Mary Point, Musqueam elder who will lead us in a welcome. Mary.
Haichka Siam, Haichka. Asiam Nesiea, and the Mary Point, Tinitanach Musqueam. It e Tmalsum, Hachkape, Kamkamala. It e Humasquim ach tameth, amid sepquaquilum. In the language of my ancestors, I let you know, my name is Mary Point. I'm from Musqueam. Today, we're sitting in an area that my family referred to as a place to harvest blueberries and cedar, and where there was many broad-leafed maples. We gathered here. On this island, there are several village sites here, one which I'll talk about where my family comes in a bit. But I just wanted to celebrate the fact that I've lived here my whole life. I know this area really well. I love this place, and I feel so connected here. And I'm always so happy to welcome everyone on behalf of my family. Our welcome means all are welcome to enter this place. These words are important to my family because this is what we have always referred to as Ta Shwometz, our home. And we are so happy to connect and share our stories and share our culture with one another, and to learn about and walk a path together with our visitors and our neighbors. I was here a couple of weeks ago with these beautiful people as this show began. And I have to say, I stayed for the whole show. I had other plans that day, but I had to stay and hear all of the stories because they really touched my heart, and the delivery of the stories really lifted me up. Today, I absolutely cannot stay for the whole thing because I have 2 daycare pickups before 5:30, 2 grandchildren at 2 different daycares. I can't wait till they're at the same place. So I'll be ducking out early, but and no disrespect to all of these beautiful people and to you. I want to say too, though, that I was here a little bit early and caught some of the rehearsal. And not only did I enjoy hearing the stories and watching the interactions, but I don't think I'm wrong when I say I see some really, truly beautiful friendships that have developed amongst all of you throughout this project. And it really shines through all of the connections that have been made. And I find it really uplifting. I'll share a little bit about my family. From the Musqueam side of the family, it is said that our first ancestors descended from the sky wrapped in clouds. And it was soon apparent that not everyone was meant to be a human. So one of our teachers, Hals, came and walked between us, got to know us, and transformed some of us into rocks and trees and flowers and fish and birds and animals. And that's why we always say in our family, we are the land and the land is us. We are connected to this place and we respect all living things because of that. Since that time, so much has changed. Our families first gathered in a place called Sequexin, which is over in an area you would now know as the foot of the Alex Fraser Bridge. And it was a place where crab apples were abundant, and it was our first port city. It's a place that's been heavily excavated for archaeological remains and belongings dating back 9,000 to 10,000 years. And as the land and the delta formed, we moved with the land. There is evidence of our families when they were putting in the footings for the Arthur Lang Bridge on the Vancouver side. They found a mask that was carbon dated and proven to be pre-glacial. And here on the delta, where the islands formed in the last 3,500 to 2,500 years, there is also evidence of our existence, of our lives here on this island. And the most recent stories you'll hear about that is from where I currently work at the airport, because the airport came in 1933 and a big tarmac went down, and we're just starting to do runway repairs now and peeling back that tarmac. And as we do so, we're running into my late loved ones and their belongings. And it's going to be a time as we move forward with runway repairs of great storytelling, because what we're looking at when we think about the airport, it's the largest protected site in the Lower Mainland. Throughout the rest of our village sites in Vancouver, they've all been dug up and developed, and people have come and gone and planted things and put up buildings and torn them down. But where the airport is, it's just been capped over for decades. So we're about to enter into a really awesome time of learning and storytelling and gathering of information. So that is the story on my Musqueam side of the family, and you'll hear more about that, as I say, as our work proceeds there. But I'll share a little bit more about my mother. She came from Ireland on a one-year teaching contract. She was not planning to stay, but she met my dad and ended up marrying him. And then something happened to her as an Irish subject who had traveled the world as an independent woman. She married an Indian and lost all of her rights. Wasn't allowed to work, wasn't allowed to vote, wasn't allowed to immigrate. She was already declared an Indian. And so she was very surprised at all of that, and it took almost 20 years before she got her rights back and was able to immigrate as a citizen here in Canada. So these are just little glimpses into my story. You're going to hear some really fabulous stories here this evening. And I just wanted to share a little bit about mine. Before I release the mic to you guys, I'm going to share a song that comes from my great uncle Dominic Point. So this song I'm going to share comes from the village of Quaich, right here in what is now called Richmond. It's a song of the land, and I know that there are some familiar faces here who know the song. So I hope those who know it sing along, and those who don't know it yet join in, and just to honor the land and the family. It's a song that Musqueam people sing when we're out on the water. As our elders say, they sing it over and over and over again until the ancestors come and sit with them. But we also sing it when we're entering a new community to let people know we're coming with good intentions. And we sing it when we're standing in community to share a little bit of who we are. It's a song that we sing to celebrate victory. It's a song that we sing at the beginning of any new journey. And it's a song that we sing to celebrate journeys that are coming to a close. So I'm really pleased to share it with you. It's our Musqueam paddle song. Yo My heart is full when I hear all these beautiful voices singing along, and I really feel that my ancestors are all smiling when others are singing as well and learning about a little history of who we all are. This is a time of learning and a time to share culture with one another, and it really lifts me up. So as I go, because I'm lifted up, I want to lift each and every one of you up in return. So I'm raising my hands to each of you. Hi, Tsepka. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mary, for this welcome. I invite everyone here to take a moment to reflect on the land we are on, your connection to this land, and how we can capture the spirit of all those who came before us from time immemorial. On behalf of the City of Richmond, Richmond Multicultural Community Services, and all our community partners, artists and performers, I would like to welcome everyone again to this afternoon's performance of Mosaic Firefly as part of the City of Richmond's Diversity Symposium. I would like to recognize our community partners, Richmond Multicultural Community Services, City Center Community Association, and Mindro Senior Center Society. We acknowledge and thank the Government of Canada for their generous support of this project. This Community Engaged Artist Project began in 2022 with the successful receipt of $92,000 federal grant from the Community Support, Multiculturalism, and Anti-Racism Initiatives Program. This program supports the mandate of the Department of Canadian Heritage by building on Canada's strength as a diverse and inclusive society. The program's objectives are to support communities in confronting racism and discrimination, promoting intercultural and interfaith understanding, and fostering equitable opportunities to participate fully in Canadian society. Promote and engage in discussions on multiculturalism, diversity, racism, and religious discrimination at the domestic and international levels. Strengthen research and evidence to build understanding of the disparities and challenges faced by racialized and religious minority communities and Indigenous peoples. In the summer of 2022, Presentation House Theatre, in collaboration with the Vancouver Asian Canadian Theatre, was selected through a two-stage open artist call for their project Mosaic Firefly. Mosaic Firefly was a year-long community-engaged, artist-led project that invited Richmond youth and seniors to explore multiculturalism, cultural diversity, racism, and discrimination through a variety of artistic mediums, including storytelling, performance, and painting. To share more about this project, I would like to introduce the lead artist of this Mosaic Firefly, Manami Hara, co-artist lead and director of Applied Theatre Presentation House Theatre, and Derek Chen, co-artist lead and managing artistic director of the Vancouver Asian Canadian Theatre.
Thank you. As Mary said, my heart is full standing here with Derek and all these beautiful Mosaic Firefly Richmond Edition participants in front of you sharing this really special moment. So thank you for coming. We have met separately, youth and seniors met separately about 10 times, together twice as an intergenerational sessions. And we explored the world of storytelling and explored a bit of acting, improvisation, and collaboration. And through that time, we collected their personal migration stories that they shared so generously. And we acted out their stories as a group in each of those sessions. We had so much fun. And today, these brave souls are going to share shortened version of their personal migration stories. They're going to act it out, become different characters, and whatever happens, we practiced, of course, and we rehearsed. But who knows? They are very, very, very creative people. So something incredible might happen right at that moment, and you are here to witness this special moment. And I just want to say thank you to all of you, so generously sharing your stories and bravely acting out today. And we are so lucky to witness that.
We are indeed, and on behalf of Presentation House Theatre and Vancouver Asian Canadian Theatre, we would just really like to thank all the staff and volunteers and everybody else that have been a part of this program, help facilitate this program, and help making this happen along the way. Without all of you, this would not have been possible, and you all have made our lives and our jobs so much easier, so thank you. Here we go, Mosaic Firefly Richmond Edition Migration Stories.
This is my story.
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 This is our story.
I was 5 years old when I arrived in Vancouver with my parents.
I went to New York in 1993, and a few years later, I immigrated to Vancouver with my family.
When I finally stepped outside at the Vancouver airport,
When I finally arrived at the airport of New York, my first impression,
the thing I remember the most, was the brightest sunshine
and the clearest blue sky.
I arrived in Vancouver in 1968, and then I come with my husband and 2 children, and I make my life. And I moved to Richmond in 1972.
My husband's sister has been living here, and so me and my husband and 4 kids moved here in 1970.
I came here 1975 with my husband.
In 1973, my brother and I arrived in Vancouver with our mother. We lived in Coquitlam in a co-op housing unit.
My parents moved the family to Canada in 1979 and started a house building business in Victoria.
In 2000, I left Montreal to Yale. He is very cold. I go to Richmond in the 2010.
In 2010, my son's family immigrated to Canada. In 2015, I visited them. The next year, I settled in Richmond and moved into my own house. Since then, I settled here.
I immigrated with my family in 2010. I came here because of my son. My family wasn't rich, so it was difficult for me but I work hard, very, very hard to make it happen.
My parents moved from Beirut, Lebanon in 2010. We came to Ontario.
My mother moved from China to here in Canada while pregnant with me, along with my grandmother. My father stayed in China for work.
My mom, dad, my aunt, and my grandma came here in 2004. They grew up in Afghanistan, and then they moved to Iran for 2 years, and then they came here.
In my house, we avoided this topic, so I didn't know how my mother came to Canada. But thanks to this project, I was able to talk to them and find out how my family came to Canada.
My mother, grandfather, grandmother, uncle, and aunt immigrated to Canada in 1998. I'm Savannah, and this is my story. In 1998, business was not good. In 1998, there we stood, between the lands and the sea that were 14 hours apart. It was difficult to say goodbye. It was difficult to chase after dreams. The world spoken code, experience, reference, interview, 45, 725, sun to moon. In 1998, business was not good. In 1998, there we stood. Us and them. Them. Our parents wanted to give us a better life in Canada. Danya's story.
Things were really bad in Afghanistan. My mom had to stop going to school when she was in grade 4. It wasn't safe. The women's rights there are really bad. They have this mindset, women should just stay home and you can't go to school, so let's just get them married. That is why a lot of people there get married really young. My mom and my aunt, that is how it worked. My dad and mom got married young, and they decided when they had kids, they wanted to come here to give them a better life. My dad did not want that for us. They all came together like a big family. My older sister, my aunt, and my grandmother in 2004. I don't think my parents knew anybody before they came here. My dad was going to be a doctor, but he couldn't because he wanted to come here, so he never finished university. My mom cooks a lot of traditional food, like kabuli, which is rice with chopped up carrots and raisins. She's been trying to teach me, but I'm really busy with school. My dad works in North Vancouver, but he doesn't want to leave Richmond. He leaves at 7:30 in the morning and is back at 11 at night, and he does this every day, so I don't really get to see him. I wish he was around more, but I know he is doing it for the family. I would like to go to Afghanistan and see where my parents grew up someday. Sarah's story.
Hello everyone, I'm Sarah. My mom was a successful landscape architect in Beirut. My dad went to Michigan to complete his degree in mechanical engineering. During the winter, my father visited Lebanon to see his family and friends. My parents first met at a delightful dinner party, and it was love at first sight. The two decided to get married and apply for a U.S. green card around 2003. However, applications from blacklisted countries were rejected due to the political climate following 9/11. So, they applied to immigrate to Canada. They were accepted in 2004. Plans for their wedding were in full swing. The wedding dress was ready, food and flowers were arranged, but a few weeks later, a letter arrived from the Canadian government stating that their papers were lost, so they were forced to postpone their wedding and were left devastated. In May 2005, they reapplied and were approved. The catch? They only had 1 month to make the move. Amazingly, the dress still fit perfectly, and they managed to have the wedding. Finally, they embarked on their new journey to Windsor, Ontario. Upon arriving, my mom applied to continue her studies at a university. She was fluent in English, but faced rejection due to her Lebanese work experience and degree not being recognized. This rejection was disheartening, leading her to abandon the idea of further education. Sadly, this situation isn't unique. It's demoralizing to witness doctors and well-educated professionals find themselves working in unrelated fields upon immigrating. My mom often recalls the stark contrast between a fast-paced life filled with family, friends, and delicious food in Beirut to the cold and desolate and isolated atmosphere of Windsor. My dad would go to work every morning, leaving my mom home alone. The house was quiet without family and friends. Snow seemed never-ending until March. The piles of snow were endless, and walking through knee-deep snow was just, In November 2006, I was born, bringing a touch of excitement to the household. In 2010, my brother was born, bringing further dynamics to our family. And then, in the summer of 2011, my mom decided it was time for a change. Her interest in skiing prompted the move to Vancouver. My family makes an annual summer trip to Lebanon. This connection to my parents' culture is invaluable. Richmond feels like home to me, and it holds a special place in my heart, but Lebanon is just as significant. I speak Arabic and have a strong cultural connection, and it provides me with a unique sense of belonging. I aspire to go on an exchange program for a year in order to fully immerse myself in the experience of living there. Amy's story.
My mother grew up in the countryside in Shantou as the hardworking top student of every class. She was going to university in Canada, but due to SARS, she stayed in China. 3 years later, she and her family went to Canada and bought a house. She became a banker after graduating from the University of Guangzhou. She came from a somewhat wealthy family. My father grew up in Sichuan, China. He didn't have much money and wasn't as much of a study-holic as she was, but he was still a hard worker. During his early 20s, he became a border patrol where he earned enough money to support his family. His work required him to travel to Shantou, my mother's town. Through the introduction of my aunt, they met in a movie theater. They dated for a year before getting married. After that, my mother decided to officially move to Richmond with my grandma while pregnant with me. My father stayed in China for work. On September 20th of 2007, I was born, their first child. When I was around 1 year old, they took me to China to meet my father for the first time. After spending a good amount of time together as a family of 3, we returned to Canada. 1 year later, my mother gave birth to my first brother. My father came to Canada to visit his first son for the first time. The 4 of us spent quality time together, but my father could not always stay long. He had to go back to China for work. My family goes back there frequently during the summertime. Canada is where I call home. China is where my parents call home. I cannot imagine myself living there, especially hearing about how strict the schools are for my mother's childhood stories. Even though my parents strongly prefer China over Canada, they decided to move here for the future of their children. I'm grateful that my parents gave me the opportunity to grow up in Canada. I'm proud of being a Chinese Canadian, and it is a privilege to have a home in China I can go back to and see the difference between the two countries. Kalia's story.
My mother grew up in Guangzhou, China. My grandfather was a manager of a hotel named White Swan Hotel. They lived very luxuriously. My mother was privileged and received a good education. On the other hand, my grandmother's family was poor and had many children, so she was adopted by another relative. She went from extreme poverty to middle-class lifestyle. Then she met my grandfather. They got married and had my mother and older sister. My grandmother encouraged my mother to have a better education, better career. And so she went to Canada, and she studied at BCIT to become an accountant. My mother met my father there, and they got married. Being with him was an eye-opening experience for my mother. She learned about materialism and consumerism and what it means to be rich or poor. Moving to another country and meeting him brought her different perspectives in life. In Canada, the education system is different, and there are better opportunities. My mother paved a path for me. Her biggest regret is to be so far away from her parents and sister. I'm grateful to this project because it gave me the opportunity to talk to my mother and ask her about her immigration story. Elena, Kulvinder, Michael, Asmina, Mary, Tina, Leticia, Louise, Mrs. Liu, and Mr. Liu. They packed up their belongings, said goodbye to their friends and families, and left their homelands. Tina's story.
I came to Canada in 2010 for my son. Moving here was a big sacrifice, for sure. It's for my child, my family, and the people I love. I had to pass the IELTS exam 3 years of going to tutors for English lessons. On top of working in Taiwan, the pressure was high. I scored 60% barely passed. And here we are. My husband came here with my son first. I stayed back in Taiwan to work. I didn't see my son for a whole year. We call each other every 2 days. I miss him, but we worked through it because we had our goals, our targets. When I finally moved here, we bought an apartment in Richmond. It was hard getting a job. Sometimes I wish I spoke Cantonese. At one interview, as soon as they found out I didn't speak Cantonese, I didn't get the job. It hurt. Sometimes I miss my sister in Taiwan. I was very close with her. When I was in university in Taipei, I lived with her and studied together. She supported me financially for everything. I want to go back to see her. Unfortunately, we aren't technically related. So legally, I can't help her to immigrate. We call each other. Sometimes I stay up late at night and it's daytime in Taiwan. I want to go back to Taiwan to keep her company. In my 13 years of life here in Canada, I think I adapt well. I'm an optimistic person. I got friends helping me along the way. I feel that you should approach everybody genuinely. Helping other people also has a good effect on you. As soon as you can, why wouldn't I help somebody? That's my philosophy. And that's why people help me in return. I'm rather fortunate. Corinda story.
This is Coinder. She was 28 when she came to Canada. She was happy to come to Canada to be with her husband, but her mother would stay up at night, walk around and say, "I am worried about you going to Canada." She did not know her husband at all. It had been an arranged marriage. The custom was not to show the girls to the boys when the parents were making the marriage connection. But her husband asked her parents if he could see her before he left for Canada. So he saw her the day before and liked her, and that's how the marriage proceeded. She flew to England, then to Toronto alone. At the Toronto airport, she was put together with an elderly couple who had some issues with their documents. She didn't speak any English, so she didn't understand what was happening. She was left feeling alone and very vulnerable. Finally, a police officer figured it out and said, "Oh, no, this is an Indian girl. You can go through." Her husband was waiting for her at the Vancouver airport. He brought her in front of everybody. So everyone in the community knew that his bride had arrived in Canada. Her husband is very tall, keeps himself active, and is very hardworking. He got into real estate and also worked in a factory in a mill. He already had a house for her. When she first came to Canada, she picked strawberries and blueberries. Eventually, they had their own blueberry and strawberry farm, so she supervised. They had 2 very nice sons. She found the lifestyle here much easier than the lifestyle she had in India. She felt much happier because there is a lot more support here. In India, everything was manual, used wood and cooked on the logs. But here, there is a lot more electronics. So she gets more time to rest. Her mother came in 1978, but only stayed for 5 months. She did not find living in Canada interesting and was missing home, so she ended up going back. She passed away before Kowinder could see her again. Something that she brought with her from India to Canada is friendship. She had friends in India, and she has friends here now. And she cherishes friendship. It is the spirit of friendship that makes her happy. Azmina's story.
This is Azmina. Azmina was born in her grandparents' humble home in Nairobi, Kenya. She was headstrong and valued independence at a young age. Following the mass expulsion of Asians from Uganda during the reign of Idi Amin in the early 1970s, Azmina's mom felt it would be safer for them to apply for citizenship to Canada. They arrived in Vancouver in 1973. Azmina's grandparents followed 2 years later. The early years were challenging. Azmina was teased in school, but made best friends with a Polish girl called Ibi, and an Ismaili girl whom she still sees today. Azmina's grandparents, her extended family, and community of Ismailis provided the foundation for her emotional stability during the early years. In 1995, Azmina started her own skincare and aromatherapy business on West Broadway. One day, a very handsome and tall man of Norwegian descent came into her clinic. Arne was Christian. He was kind and generous. Their friendship grew into a relationship that spanned over 20 years. Arne introduced her to skiing, kayaking, windsurfing, tennis, and swimming in the ocean. Azmina attended church with him, and in turn, Arne came to many Ismaili celebrations. On September 5th, 2012, Arne passed away. It was one of the saddest moments of Azmina's life. To work through her grief, she joined a 1-year course in creative writing through Simon Fraser University's continuing education. She was able to reflect on how deeply she had integrated into her adopted country while still having deep roots in her cultural faith and identity. Azmina needed her piece to be edited and proofread before it went to get printed. The man behind the counter at the print shop asked Azmina very kindly and politely if there was anything he could do to help. 2.5 hours went by as he proofread Azmina's story word for word and got it ready to send off to the publisher. This very kind man is Michael. He is Azmina's best friend and companion, and they have been together for 7 years. Being in Canada for over 40 years now, Azmina has had the opportunity to experience the vastness of this country. Its people, the diversity of beliefs and cultures that live harmoniously side by side. She is filled with awe and gratitude to a country whose essence is one of generosity and inclusion. Michael's story.
I attended military boarding school in England from the age of 7 until 17. I started sailing with my father when I was 5. At school, I sailed racing yachts in many competitions around England. I have seen every Shakespeare play, some of them more than once. In 1979, my parents moved the family to Canada and started a house building business in Victoria. I joined them in Canada in 1980, once I had finished school. I spent a winter semester doing first-year law studies, but received a job offer with an international bank in England, so I headed back. Each year, I had to renew my Canadian residency status, but the third year, the immigration officer told me that I would not get a further renewal and would have to decide whether to let it lapse or go. 2 weeks later, I gave my notice on my job, bought a plane ticket, sold off my furnishings, and packed a few personal possessions in my old Army kit bag. When I flew back to Canada in 1983, I felt that this was as a definite, permanent move. For 13 years, I was married to a lovely woman of Italian origin, and we have a beautiful daughter, Emma, who is now 25 years old. Upon coming to Canada, I've continued my boating interests to this day, and over the past 7 years, we've restored 2 older wooden boats, and I'm presently rebuilding a vintage Canadian 1950s aluminum speedboat called a Feathercraft. 7 years ago, I met Azmina, and we have made a wonderful life together. We were born in very different parts of the world, myself in Devon, England, and Azmina in Nairobi, Kenya. And I feel that we bring the very best of our individual cultures and experiences together to enhance our lives in a most Canadian way. We greatly enjoy living on the West Coast and really feel connected to the ocean. I feel that I retain a fond attachment to the country from which I come, even though I've enjoyed spending the majority of my life in Canada, which I truly consider to be my home. Mr. and Mrs. Liu's story.
This is Mrs. Liu. She finished her degree in Sri Lanka and taught English and Buddhist studies at university in China. She retired in 2007. Her husband passed away in 1996. Her son's family immigrated here in 2010. She came here in 2015. In 2016, she moved into her own house in Richmond, joined the Happy Choir at the Activity Center for Seniors.
This is Mr. Liu. He studied optical engineering and worked in Shanghai as he started his family. His story is the story of China opening up and catching up to the rest of the world. He was one of the first scientists that the Chinese government sent overseas on exchange programs. He retired in 1996. He came to Canada in 2000 and lived in Montreal for about 10 years. Then he moved here to Richmond. It was too cold in Montreal. People in China call Hangzhou heaven on earth. Mr. Liu has a friend from there, and he says that Vancouver is the real heaven.
She's been teaching seniors basic English for 7 years now. Mr. Liu and his wife were her students.
In 2019, Mr. Liu's wife passed away.
She went to his wife's funeral to say goodbye. That's when she really noticed Mr. Liu. Eventually, he asked her out. She hesitated because she had been single for more than 20 years by then. She was used to her life, single and free.
They went for a walk in a park with some friends. Mr. Liu made her a very complicated dish called Buddha's Feast. There were many, many layers. Abalone, shiitake, everything.
She can't cook. This dish he made, she's never seen that before.
Did you know that Mrs. Liu is a Qing Dynasty royalty descendant? She's a princess. He needs to serve her well.
He's a good man, honest, works hard.
Mr. and Mrs. Liu got married 3 years ago.
So that's that, and now here they are.
Life is strange like that.
It's important to keep an active mind. She teaches and Mr. Liu records them during the day, edits and releases them online in the evening. Some of these online groups have over 100 people from all over the world. Some videos have over 2,000 even, 10,000 views. This is meaningful work, all volunteer work.
Mr. Liu copies Tang Dynasty poems all the time as he practices his calligraphy. Additionally, he's been writing his memoir for over 30 years now. Letitia's story.
This is Leticia. She was born in Canton, China. She moved to Hong Kong when she was 10 years old. After graduating elementary school, she moved to Peru. Her mom was born there. One summer, she made a friend in Macau who became her husband. In 1962, they got married and she was baptized in Lima. Her children were born in Lima. Her mother-in-law helped raise them. They went to the beach a lot. They'd have a picnic at the beach. In 1970, she moved here to Vancouver with her 4 children, her in-laws, and her husband. Her life in Peru was quite nice. They had domestic helpers. Living in Canada was more difficult. Her first job was to pick strawberries with her husband's younger sister. They got picked up at 7 a.m. and worked until 4 p.m. at the farms in Richmond. It was hard work. The next day, her body was aching. She could barely walk up the stairs after the second day. So she quit. Her husband started a grocery store, and they moved to Richmond in 1971. When her children were young, they would close the store for 2 weeks and go camping in Osoyoos. There were lots to do there. Swimming, fishing, water skiing. Their store lasted 19 years, and then she retired in 1991. Her old house was too big, so they sold the house in 2010 and moved into an apartment. Her husband's brain is not working so well anymore, so she found a good care home for him in 2018. They visit him every Sunday, push him around in his wheelchair. She has 7 grandchildren. Sometimes she watches them play soccer, football, and hockey. She teaches the grandkids basic Cantonese. She lives on her own now. She likes singing, exercising, joining Spanish socials, coming to the community center for activities and games. Between Canton, Hong Kong, Macau, Peru, Vancouver, Richmond, she is most used to Richmond now. Hong Kong was too crowded and she wanted a change of environment. So moving here was a good decision. Louise's story.
This is Louise. She has a few vivid memories of her childhood. There wasn't much food around, so her brother and her picked fruit. One time, they fell into a bomb crater, and it was getting dark. Everybody thought they were missing. Luckily, her grandfather's servants spread it out and found them. Another time, there were a bunch of them, 4 kids, stealing sugarcane. They hid behind the house and chewed on all of it. Her mom came home and found out that everything was gone. They wouldn't admit they ate it, but the evidence was there, of course. One time, her dad's appendix burst. She would take care of him alone at night during the week. A nurse came up to her and said she should study nursing since she was so dedicated. So she immediately applied and moved away to the school. So she studied very hard. One day, she had a dream that her dad was in the hospital. 3 days later, a long-distance call came. Her dad had a heart attack. The matron gave her 1 week off to take care of her father. Luckily, he made it. After that, he was fine for a while. After she graduated, she had 2 kids while she worked at the hospital. She made a life for herself. She came here in 1968 with her husband and 2 children. Life in Canada was very different. She worked approximately 8 to 12 hours each day, besides caring for the 2 children. She worked full-time as a RPN at Vancouver General Hospital, then rushed to Sunny Hill Children's Hospital for another 4 hours for 3 evenings. They put a down payment on a split level 3 bedroom house. After work, she would go home, take the children out for an hour, or visit their grandparents, then return home and make dinner. In 1971, she applied for the microbiology training program in Vancouver General Hospital. When she completed the program, she was assigned to work permanent evening shifts from 6 p.m. to midnight. This provided her time to attend to family needs and chores at home, while also driving the children to Chinatown for their Chinese education. Mary's story.
Hello. My ancestors came from the northern part of China, but I grew up in a southern city. In the early 1990s, my 6-year-old son and I joined my husband in New York, where he was a scholar studying at a well-known university. My first impression as soon as I landed in the New York airport was, the sky is so blue and clear. The first few weeks in New York, I felt a huge sense of loss about what I had left behind. My family, my teaching job at university, my students, my friends, and my favorite hometown food. Luckily, I don't like to waste time being negative, so I found a translating job and joined a seminar at the university where my husband was studying. We stayed in New York for 3 years. After that, we decided to immigrate to Canada. My husband found a teaching job at a school in West Vancouver, and I found a teaching assistant's job at the same school. I was very happy that I had students again in my life, even though they were much younger. I remained confident and happy even though I was bullied by some of my colleagues. To them, I was a new immigrant and just a teaching assistant. And my confidence paid off. It was very tough for me to get a teaching certificate here because they don't recognize most of the courses and credits I took in China. I had to retake a lot of courses and go back to China to get references, letters, and my diploma. I got my teaching certificate and became a high school teacher. I taught ESL, math, and Mandarin. It was so fun teaching Canadian kids, English-speaking kids, Mandarin. We taught them how to make dumplings, the dragon dance, and took them to Chinatown. I'm very confident in Canada's society and the environment because most people are friendly, intelligent, and against racism. I find that Canadians embrace the culture of others. I have confidence in our society. I'm not sure what's ahead of me, but one thing I'm quite sure is that look forward and enjoy the moment. Elena's story.
Since I was 5 at the time when I first came to Canada, my memory isn't the clearest. What I do recall comes in little collages that interweave together. Collage number 1. In China, my grandpa and I were sitting on a rocking chair, and he told me that I was going to Canada. I said, "What is Canada?" To me, Canada was a mysterious land that I would soon explore. Collage number 2. It was my first time ever going on an airplane. I remember taking long naps during the flight. With the gentle rocking movement of the airplane in the sky, it was like I was sleeping on clouds. Collage number 3. At the Vancouver airport, when we finally set foot for the first time outside, the thing I remember the most was the brightest sunshine and the clearest blue sky. The air was so fresh. Collage number 4. I had never seen so many trees and greenery in an urban area. There were houses, fences, and flowers of all different colors. It was a colorful world, like a secret garden. The first time I went to Safeway, I begged my mom to go to the snack section, and it was just as colorful as the world outside. Cookies, crackers, and pastries lined the shelves. I told myself I would try every single Canadian snack, and I am still on that journey. Collage number 5. At an orientation at my new school, when the teacher started to call students names, me, with my pretty much non-existent English skills, thought she had called my name when it was actually somebody else. My parents corrected me, and it was a small mistake, but perhaps the excitement of the first day made it seem more serious than it actually was. I told my folks I would not talk again for the entire day. Collage number 6. The first day of kindergarten, I held my mom's hand tightly as we entered the classroom. People started to take out their snacks. I brought my favorite bear cookies. My mom urged me to share them with this short little girl. She told me, if you share your snack, others will give you their snacks too. But the little girl's mom said that she was allergic. I had no idea why some people couldn't eat certain things. But why would I care? Because now my cookies were all mine and they actually offered me her food. It was the best trade offer of my life because the result was a friendship of 12 years and still ongoing with that same girl I sat next to on the first day of school. Collage number 7. From that first day of kindergarten, I think that is where my transition ends. After that, I felt less of a newcomer and more of a member of the community. My friend's mom and my mom are friends too, and I guess that friendship makes you feel part of the place you live.
And this is our story.
Maybe I'll ask the amazing participants a couple of questions, and then I'll open it up to the floor and see if you have any questions for our participants. You all had separate sessions, seniors and then youth, but then we also had a couple of sessions where the two groups meet and acted together. Does anyone want to talk a little bit about what was that like, meeting each other for the first time, and what was that experience like?
I didn't expect the elders to be so energetic, but I think it's great that they matched our energy. They were more energetic than the teenagers were. So, yeah.
I honestly wholeheartedly agree with this answer because we came to the sessions like after school or like middle of the day, and they were, energized, ready to go, having fun, and we all pulled up with like eye bags, and it was just so bad. But yeah, I think it was a great kind of refresher, and like it made us feel all really like together as one.
Oh, I'm so great that I have joined in. And at the beginning, I didn't know what's going on. I just joined and have fun. But it was amazing that I meet all these young people. Oh my goodness me. They are so lovely and so happy. And that they make me, join with the, happiness with them. And I get to know the younger people, better. Because we always say, young people, right? But they are not. They are very, very nice and gentle and lovely. So I'm great to meet them.
Help us, yeah. And I feel very happy, and I learn a lot. This is a program, and I'm very happy to be here. Thank you.
I want to say thanks to Manami. She is so professional. Every time we act something plot mistake, she correct us very patiently and very gently, very nice. So I appreciate to her. And the last person, but not the least, is Derek. Yeah, he sorry. He is really gentleman. He said to me, Tina, don't get nervous. Just to be yourself, and you can make it.
Instead of guessing what other people are thinking. We should come out, share, communicate, and connect. Racism do exist, but just like a firefly, one is tiny, but many together can break through the darkness and light up the sky. I would like to thank the city of Richmond and the great organizer Nihat, the amazing directors Manami and Derek, and Linda Carson for listening to me and helping writing down my story, and Jennifer Wang from the Senior Center. Every time she was there welcoming us and setting out the tables. And all the participants, your talents, your enthusiasm, your team spirit, and your stories are very, very impressive. Last but not least, thank you, the audience, for coming to support us. Thank you.
Coming together with a group of people like this, where English was a barrier, and I met so many diverse cultures of people that before they were not accessible to me. You know, I would come to Richmond, I'd go to the stores, but they were not accessible because of the language. And then these stories through play acting, through just kind of mimicking without words, we got to know the different characters, and these people came alive to me, including the younger people who was so enthusiastically joined our group and asked about our stories and listened. But it broke the barriers, and that was very powerful for me. So it was incredible.
Thank you everyone for coming and sharing this. I think many of us really didn't know what to expect. We were just asked if we'd be interested to participate, and I come across a little bit as I don't think people consider me as an immigrant, but I did make a decision to come here. My family moved and I was still in England, and it was like, okay, where should I go? And looking back over several decades, I've really learned what being Canadian is. And it's a choice we make every day of how we want to treat people we meet, people we think we know. And as soon as Mina pointed out, as soon as you actually start interacting with people, it changes everything. And we now have a whole group of people that we often say we would have probably never met otherwise. And now we've had the opportunity of experiencing a really wonderful journey. It's been a year of getting together monthly. And I would say, yes, we did get to know each other. And this is something that will stay with me for the rest of my life. So thank you for everybody involved in bringing us together.
So I have talked the last time. So now I want to say the first things, you know, all of us came from different places of the world. And even from China, from mainland, from Hong Kong, from Taiwan, and all the young generations also came from different places of China. And also other people from Beirut, from England, from India. Yeah. Before, we don't know each other. We didn't know each other. But now we are in a family. I'm Tong Zhao, or in Chinese, Zhao Tong, and his name, Jingming Liu. I came to Canada 2014, and he came in 2000, and we got married. The program is, you know, so many people from different groups, ethnic groups, from different places of the world. Now we can understand each other, and also we have more knowledge about different culture.
My name's Danya.
and I'm in grade 12, and I heard about this from my friend. I'm from Afghanistan. That's where both of my parents were born and raised. And then I signed up, and I honestly had no idea what it really was. I was just told that it was something for like the community center, and I was totally open to do it. I wasn't really sure what to expect, but then, you know, she told me, and we came together to these sessions after school. And it was awesome. I really enjoyed it. Like, some really good friendships were made, like me and the other girls. Like, we have a group chat, and it's just so awesome. I loved every second. I had so much fun. There was so much laughing, interacting, seniors and the youth. We all just had so much fun, and it was like such a memorable, awesome experience.
Okay, hi, my name is Kalia. I'm in grade 12 this year. And I was born in Canada, but my parents immigrated here from China.
Hi, my name is Elena Sun. I'm also in grade 12 and I am of Chinese heritage. I actually immigrated here with my parents when I was 5 years old.
So Elena and I actually share the same experience. We were lucky enough to be on the panelist team that helped decide which artists were going to lead this grant-funded project. And we are really glad that we ended up with Manami and Derek because they are wonderful directors and they made this amazing project for us. And it was so stress-free despite the fact that there were many practices and we had an audience. And a lot of us didn't have experience with theater. Even though a lot of it was improv, I felt like it was fun, it was enjoyable, and it was stress-free.
You know, today was the big cherry on the top to showcase all our experiences and skills. And personally, I've done acting. I'm in theater at school, but doing something more improv related has been a really fun experience. I think everyone has their unique experience in terms of coming to Canada, dealing with racism, discrimination, and although we may never understand, we are a step closer when we step into each other's shoes and experience it through acting.
My name is Leticia Yep, and I came to Canada with my husband and 4 kids in 1970. This is my first time, and I get to learn a lot, and how to act and everything. I really like it.
I'm Tina. I immigrated from Taiwan. Difficult part for me, it was the how to acting. What is the perfect time to act out, and I have to overcome my fearness to be more confident to stand in front of the audience.
My name is Amy, and I was born here in Canada after my mom moved here from Shantou in China. This performance was very intriguing because I got to learn about other people's backgrounds and their stories. There were a lot of interactive activities. We played this game where we would sit in a circle. We would tell each other one part of our stories, like any kind of story we've had in our lives. And then in the end, we would all gather together and then try to guess whose story it was. So that was really fun and interesting.
My name is Mary Liu. I come from China, Hunan province in 1996. Session when I came in, I was so uncertain. What would it be like? But as time goes on, every session is so fun, so engaging, and so entertaining. I would like to thank the City of Richmond for this program and also all the people involved in helping us. I think it's a great way to unite immigrants and to have appreciations for the society.
So hi everyone, my name is Sarah. I'm 16 years old. I was born in Toronto and my parents immigrated to Canada from Beirut, Lebanon in 2005. I was born in 2006 And then in 2011, when I was 5 years old, we immigrated to Vancouver. And when I signed up, I didn't really know exactly what was going to happen. But then once we started to have a couple workshops where we engaged in a lot of theater activities and we practiced sharing our immigration stories through improv and other forms of media, it became really interesting, really engaging, and I really enjoyed it. And then once we got to the point where we collaborated with the senior citizens for their immigration stories, it became really lively. It was a lot of fun. It was completely different from what I'd expect, but I did really enjoy it, and I'm really grateful for this project and what it taught me about diversity and appreciating others' backgrounds and cultures. Yeah, overall, I think what I take away is definitely not to judge a book by its cover in any way, shape, or form. It doesn't necessarily have to be in a discriminatory way, but just in a fact that I would have never expected that all of these people were from such different places with such different lives. So I just really appreciate what that taught me.
This is our story.